The Fujifilm x100v is a camera I've had for well over 3.5 years now, and since buying it, it's been my favorite camera of all time. It's also been the backbone of this YouTube channel. You guys probably already know, but I've made countless videos on it. And yes, this was before the hype. Within the past year or so, it seems like every big name YouTuber has gotten their hands on this camera and used it to inflate their channel. Which isn't a bad thing, it's a smart move actually, but I'm sure few still use it today. And because of all this hype, there seems to be a few things that people still get wrong about the Fujifilm x100v. But today I'm going to clear all of that up with you. We're going to talk about everything from what people get wrong about this camera to who this camera is best suited for. And a reminder, this is not a tech or spec review. Anything you want to find out about the camera you can find in my other videos. Let's start with this one. The x100v is too expensive. Many complain that the x100v is too expensive, especially when buying resale. If you do quick searches on eBay, the camera is still selling for about $2,000. And the only thing I can say to that is, don't buy it then. The price of a camera reflects its value in the marketplace. So if the x100v is $2,000, that's because the demand for it is that high. That's what people are willing to pay for this camera. And the reason why people are complaining is because they want the camera as well and they can't get it for the retail price. But how badly you want it isn't going to change how much it's going to cost. You just have to determine whether or not you're willing to pay the price. So if you want the camera, save up for it. If it's too expensive, buy a different camera. In my opinion, however, you don't need the latest and greatest or most popular gear to create good work. I've taken plenty of photos with the old X Pro 1 and I've still gotten amazing images out of it that I have since sold as prints. So the resolution of the images, the sensor, and the camera aren't as important as the photos you actually take. And if you want to go out and spend $2,000 on a camera, understand you are paying a premium for these special features and preferences that you want. But no one's forcing you to buy the camera. If you don't think it's worth it, don't buy it. If you want to change the lens, you're missing the point. One of the many things people complain about is how you can't change the lens. They're missing the point. The Fujifilm x100v is a niche camera. It's not a systems camera like the Fujifilm X-T4 or X-T5. It's not meant for everyone. This is because the camera has a fixed lens, meaning it only makes sense if you like the 35mm equivalent focal length. But that's the point of this camera. It does one thing wrong, so it can do many things excellently. Now, if you're someone like me who enjoys the 35mm equivalent, that's not a bad thing. Actually, it's more of a good thing. Having a fixed lens saves on size and bulk and removes any of the decision making you might have before going outside. You don't have to worry about which lens to bring because you don't really have a choice in this case. Instead, it's just grab and go and moving on with your day. I personally like to use this camera in everyday scenarios. Maybe I have to run errands, maybe I'm meeting up with some friends, maybe I'm going camping. But it's a perfect camera to just bring along whenever I'm going about my everyday life. So I think the point of this camera is not to cover all your photography bases, but to be a companion that you bring along with you. And that comes with understanding that the x100v isn't meant for everyone. This is because most people don't actually see the world in a 35mm equivalent focal length. I think a lot of people would actually be more suited with a camera that has a 28mm or 50 equivalent focal length. If you're unsure of what focal length to be shooting with, here's how to find the focal length that is best for you. Grab a solid standard zoom lens. Take something like the XF 18-55 kit lens and just run around taking photos. Spend a week on each focal length, taking pictures with only the 18mm end, the 23mm end, 35, and so on. As you begin to shoot with it, you will get used to and understand the different focal lengths. This is important because I believe most people don't actually know what each equivalent focal length looks like in their heads. They can't picture it or think of it when they try to imagine it. And this is why many people have a hard time figuring out which prime lens to buy because they don't actually know what the focal length means or shows or represents in the first place. The good news is that all you have to do to figure this stuff out is to spend more time shooting with each equivalent focal length. Once you get used to each focal length, you'll begin to understand the differences. And you can figure this stuff out by reviewing the photos you like the best. When you review your photos, pay attention to the ones you like the most. See which field of view makes the most sense to your brain, which field of view excites you the most, and whichever one you want to take more pictures with. That will tell you which prime lens to buy. In my case, I got lucky with the x100v. This 23mm was something that immediately clicked with me before I even understood the different focal lengths. So I went about it backwards, and this past year or two, I've been spending a lot of time with zoom lenses to really understand the various different focal lengths. And if I had to go about it now, I wouldn't recommend this method. I think it'd be much easier and cheaper if you started out with a zoom lens and spent time trying to understand the different focal lengths, treated it like a prime before you went out and bought something like the V. Then if something like the 35 equivalent excites you, you can consider picking up something like the x100V. The next thing people get wrong about this camera is that reviews won't change the x100V. In the past year or so, there have been a lot of mixed reviews on this camera. Some people praise the heck out of it, others talk shit about it just for the views. I'm of the former. I've been praising this camera since the beginning. But at the end of the day, the x100v is just the x100v. The actual camera itself won't change. Meaning, if you don't want to buy it because of something someone said on YouTube, don't buy it. There's a lot of people who don't like this camera simply because it's overhyped. But there's also a lot of people on the other side who are buying this camera just because it's popular. But that really doesn't change anything, only your perception of the camera. So despite what all these other people might say, the reviews of this camera, all this fluff, if the V is something that suits your wants and needs, then it still is a good choice to buy. Ignore everything else. If there's anything I've learned about buying and reselling gear over the years, it's that no one really truly understands your photography needs. No one understands your photography, the environments you're in, and your preferences as much as you do. So when you're going out and buying new cameras, there will always be hits and misses. Something someone said that was good online might really suck when you get it. But that also means that a camera you thought would suck might turn out to be your holy grail. So the best you can do is really just take things with a grain of salt and understand your wants, needs, and own psychology the best. Know when you're having gas or gear acquisition syndrome and don't fall into that trap. After all, photography is supposed to be about the photos, not the camera, right? So put the reviews aside, put the specs aside, put your gas aside, and ask yourself, will this camera help me create better work? Ultimately, that will determine whether or not you buy a new camera or lens. Which ironically leads me into the next point. The x100v is not going to make you take amazing photos. This is a big misconception. I think because this camera is so popular, it makes everyone think it's the best thing since sliced bread. Now, I certainly think it is, and I've made sure to express that over the years, but that might not be the case for you. If you're buying or using this camera because everyone's talking about how good it is, and then you finally get it and start taking crappy photos with it, I'm not sure what to tell you. Any camera, good or bad, is not going to make you take good photos. And you shouldn't buy a camera expecting it to. A camera is only as useful as its user. And the way I currently see photography is that it's about how you specifically see the world. Meaning the camera really is just an extension of your eye, and the better your photography skill is, the better you can translate that. So here are 3 simple steps to learn how to take good photos. 1. Take 1,000 photos. 2. Edit 1,000 photos. 3. Do it all over again, making improvements each time. It really is that simple, but most people don't want to hear or do the work. They'll complain and say things like, well, that's easy to say, hard to do, Andre. And you're right. It's easy to say, hard to do, meaning you don't have to do it and you won't get better. Now what? But that's the reality of it. There are no shortcuts to getting better. The price of improvement is there. Again, you simply have to determine whether or not you're willing to pay the price for it. So if you believe it's hard and that you can't do it, that is what will become your reality. But if you understand the costs associated with it and you want the dream outcome, then it's well within your capabilities to go and get it. If you want to improve your photography, you gotta put in the work. Don't expect a camera to make you better. Here's the good news though. If you do decide to dedicate yourself and take the time, even just 1 hour a day, you can make massive improvements over the course of a year. I'm not an amazing photographer by any means, but I continue to dedicate myself and put the time in, and I am slowly getting better over time. Remember, direction is more important than speed. So 1,000 micro improvements over the course of a lifetime will compound. So you might feel like you suck now, but stick to the day-to-day and you will improve. And once you improve, you'll be able to look back at how far you've come. When you look back at how far you come, you'll be excited about how far you can go. Because it's not about becoming the best photographer. Art is all apples to oranges, and a direct comparison with another photographer will always show both positives and negatives. So it's not about that. It's about developing your unique art, improving and iterating on it, and taking that as far as you can or want to. That's my current perspective on the craft. So that was a bit of a rant there, but let's bring it full circle. Who is the x100v suited for? Finding the right camera can be like striking gold. When I first bought the V, I didn't know I would like it so much. I kinda just wanted it. It seemed to do everything I wanted to do, so I kinda just took a chance and bought it. And luckily for me, it was everything I hoped for and more. But many people have to dig around and get through all the dirt and muck until you finally find the right one. This can mean buying, using, renting, reselling until you finally strike gold. This is because you're not only learning about your own preferences along the way, but your own photography as well. So if you haven't figured out which camera you like best yet, understand that that's perfectly normal. It makes sense that you don't know what you want yet. But as you explore and experiment, you will eventually understand what works best for you. So here are 3 genres I think the x100v is best suited for. 1. Everyday photography. 2. Street photography. 3. documentary photography. Based on my experience, I think the X100V really shines in these 3 areas. It's a great tag-along camera for everyday life to travel and explore cities with, and even document public places. You can also make the case of using this in weddings or photo shoots, because if you're used to a camera, you can technically use it anywhere, but documentation is where I seem to have the most fun when using this camera. This can mean taking photos of my friends and family, capturing candids of certain moments, doing dumb things, or maybe even traveling and exploring new places. For me, it's about bringing the camera along casually without worrying too deeply about photography. So all of that and more. If any of those things sound exciting to you, I couldn't recommend the X100V more, which is ironically a genre I think most people can engage in, documenting their own lives. But we'll talk more on that in another video. So hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, leave a comment down below, and if you haven't gotten one yet, I'm currently giving out free 4x6 prints. You can find the link down below. So always guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you in another video. Peace.